I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. Can you remember the world before the App Store? It's hard to, because our world is so shaped by this ability that we have to download really an app for almost anything onto our smartphones. But it was not always like that. I remember getting my first iPhone. This is all the way back in 2007. And first of all, the iPhone was not immediately embraced as the incredible revolution that it was. I remember people dissing it because it was too expensive. At the time, you had to switch over to, there was only one carrier that you could use for the iPhone. I think it was AT&T. But I got one of the early iPhones. I love all things Apple, all things Mac. I fell in love with it. I thought it was incredible. But the apps that you had, these little icons that you had on this phone that you could touch with your fingers, so amazing. There were only a few of them, and they were the ones that were put there by Apple. So there was no way to put anything new onto the phone until 2008. And that is when the App Store was released into the world, and all these different companies, really anyone who could program and design their own app, could put an app on the App Store. And so July 2008, the first 500 apps were available on the App Store. And humans, in all of their creativity and ingenuity, created things like iBeer that turned your phone into pouring beer. So useful. Or the phone saver. This is one that I remember. Maybe I was just the immature one that was downloading the useless apps, but I remember the phone saver, where you could turn your iPhone into this lightsaber that made lightsaber noises. Anyway, if you have time, take a listen to Land of the Giants and their series on Apple. They do such a great job of describing what a dramatic change the App Store brought about in the world. I mean, not only what it did for Apple in terms of increasing their revenue in a very dramatic way, but what it enabled businesses and individuals to do in creating apps that people could access. So, all that to say, we live in an app-centered world. We use apps every day. That is why I'm so excited to be interviewing Logan Fields, who started a company called The App Guys, theappguys.com. And Logan and his team create apps for individuals, for coaches, for businesses that want to have a more controlled, intimate, powerful connection with their customers. Obviously, there's so many different applications of this, but I'm really excited to talk to Logan today and ask him questions about the kinds of apps that are actually useful, whether they really make money for businesses, how businesses should think about them, whether or not it's best to build an app or to have an online, web-based tool. So many things I want to talk about with this guy. He is a serial entrepreneur. He has multiple different businesses, and he has created an app that I purchased that, it's got kind of an interesting angle. It has to do with how much time you have left in your life. Logan, it's so good to talk to you today. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I'm excited to talk.
I'm wondering if you remember the first app that you downloaded on your phone yourself as a consumer.
Yeah, it's probably Fruit Ninja.
Oh my gosh, Fruit Ninja.
Yeah.
That is so great. I was thinking of the game. I don't know if you remember this. My kids love this game, but it was Rolando. It was like you were these little circle characters that you could roll around, and it was like so wild that your phone could control these little guys and so
Hmm.
on. But now that game is gone, so it's really sad. It's a thing of the past. But you can almost track your life looking back on different apps that you used at different times, or what was all the rage at the time.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm just curious, how did you go from someone who was using apps to starting your own business, creating apps for companies? What's the story of the founding of the app guys?
I had started my own app and I was in a career where I was really making no money at the time. So I had to crowdfund it. This was 2014.
Oh
I
wow.
had to crowdfund it, which, by the way, is not as easy as it sounds. Nowadays, when you crowdfund, it means that you're throwing six figures at a marketing budget to run traffic to the crowdfunding campaign. But it worked back then, and I was able to fund my app. And as I was building it, I saw how complicated it was. It's not like you can go to a marketing company and just get a website or a lander. It's not like that at all. You have to have front end and back end and testing and regression testing and servers, all of that. And so I saw a market because I wasn't finding a team easily anyway
Right.
that was also really good at what they did. And that's a long time ago in the app world,
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
And so I took 2 weeks or a week of vacation, whatever vacation I had left. I didn't have money to go on vacation anyway. So I took vacation. I used a family printer because I couldn't even afford my own printer. And I printed the worst, janky half sheet flyer you've ever seen in your life. I just went door to door to businesses
Oh my
to
gosh.
sell an app. Yeah. And then I sold some apps and I used that money to fund the company. I didn't even have anybody to build the apps when I was selling them at first.
I love it. That's such a great origin story. It's like selling CDs out of the back of your car kind of a
Yeah.
So you were literally
Yeah.
printing paper flyers to hand to
Uh-huh.
companies to tell them about these digital apps.
Yeah.
I love it. And what was your first app that you made? Like what were you selling?
So I used to be really religious. I'm not anymore. It was a prayer app actually called Prayer Button.
That is wild.
Yeah, yeah. And Christian Daily picked it up and stuff like that. So it got us some traction at first.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
When you think about the way apps have changed in terms of the business model and how people think about them and so on, like what are some of the phases of where things started, how they evolved, and where they are now?
So a lot of people they think that an app is essentially as low barrier as a website.
Mm,
That's one thing I see. And it's not. It's not at all. We're talking about full custom software. Now, it is easier than it was. So what used to take $1 million maybe now takes $200,000 to develop. And what used to take 2 years can maybe take 4 months. So there's a lot of tools out there and processes that are very refined. The talent pool is more full to recruit from, things like that, to where it is lower barrier. But there's a few buckets that you're going to fit in because everybody has an app idea.
right.
Everybody.
I've got one. I
Um,
want I want to talk to you about
yeah,
it.
cool. So a couple things is if somebody just maybe they have a coaching business and they have content,
Mhm.
you don't need an app. I understand that it sounds cool,
Mm,
but it's too high barrier. It's too much to manage. They're too expensive for what you get. Just be a badass at running a Facebook group. Run an awesome Facebook group or something like that if that's your scenario. And
mm,
then there's something in the middle where maybe you have paid communities and stuff. And you know what? There's subscription stuff out there that you can spend $1,000 to $10,000 a year,
mm.
and it's awesome and it takes care of you. And you might even get a mobile app. Now, when you start to reach the threshold of you need something super custom,
Right.
and you have a good monetization strategy because you're talking for a minimum viable product for version 1 of almost anything $50 to $200,000.
Wow.
And yeah, it's not a small thing at all. However, they do make a lot of money if you're good at business. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
When somebody calls me and they're like, "Oh, I have $1 billion app idea. I'm not even going to have to market it. I know this is going to be a flop, and I'm probably not even taking the project when that happens
Right.
on the call." Because you have to market it and you have to be good at business.
Right.
Like the pet rock, you could argue whether that was a good idea or not, but the whoever ran that was good at business.
Right.
So you have to have be good at business to have a successful app. But man, they exit. If you want to go for some big exits,
Mm.
heavy. I've had multiple projects where we've gotten multiple 8-figure valuations. Pre-money, like pre-revenue,
Wow.
fully diluted, 50, even 200 million. I've seen it's pretty crazy.
Where
Um,
you've got clients where you're creating the app and then you're able to sell that for these incredible numbers.
yes. Now, just to be clear, what I was referencing was the valuation at which people were bringing on investors.
Oh, wow.
But yes, a lot of those are gonna have or will exit extremely heavy. And some of these exits, just real quick,
Yeah.
go up to 20x revenue. Now
Mm.
that's the high end,
Mm-hmm.
but it's it's insane. Whereas if you owned like a laundromat, for example, you're probably getting like 2, 3x net.
Mm. Incredible. And what's the secret sauce of those kind of apps? Does it have to do with mass adoption? Like, do you have to have an idea that's gonna be, downloaded by millions of people for it to have that kind of valuation? Or like what's a little bit of the formula of what makes an app really useful, valuable, profit producing?
I wish I had a more technical answer for you, but it's actually really simple. Are you a good business person or not?
Mm.
That's what it comes down to. It's not about the idea, it's not about the app. So here's one we've done called Thank You LLC. You can look it up on the App Store. You scan QR codes and you can attach a message. You order stickers that have QR codes
Mm.
and you scan them and you can attach a video message or a picture or whatever. You put it on a greeting card or a gift to a client, that kind of thing. That is maybe one of the more simple flows we've done. Now, to be fair, on the back end, there's some heavy work. They are going to exit big.
Wow.
I would be very surprised if they don't exit multiple 9 figures. That's not an amazing idea. It's a good idea, but it's
It's so simple, right? It's like,
yeah,
yeah. But so what you're saying is, which is sort of discouraging because I think we all like to think, yeah, if I just have this incredible creative idea, that's all that it takes is, but you're saying, no, it's actually all that goes into communicating that, like with this app you're talking about, what is it that they did that's led to the growth and the adoption? Is it the marketing? Is it the way that they, connected with people? Like, what's the difference maker there?
the lead guy is an incredible sales guy.
Mm.
So there's one, he was VP of sales at like a 50, $60 million company already. And he knows how to go and find B2B deals that are possibly worth 7, 8 figures each.
Wow.
And he gets creative with deal structures. And he also went full time in Thank You
Wow.
because he's super committed. Yeah,
So cool.
that's the special sauce. It's you. It's all about you.
This podcast is sponsored by the creative agency Clear and Loud. Whatever your business's product, service, or idea, we believe clarity changes everything. We help you clarify your strategy, your brand messaging, and your online content so that you reach the right audience and grow your business. If you're frustrated by an ineffective website, if your message is jumbled and confusing, and you're not getting the traction you want with your marketing, let's talk. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation by visiting clearandloud.com. What are some other like favorite projects that you've worked on in terms of apps that you've built for clients?
So we did for NASA, we did a
For
software that
NASA?
tracks.
You did an
Yeah,
app
yeah.
for NASA?
I and that's the reason it's cool
Oh my gosh.
because I mean, I love NASA, right? So being able to do something with them was, I mean, about as cool as you can get, but it tracks shipments to and from the space station. So that was a cool software. And then another one is we did something called Foodie, and that's on the App Store right now. You can't use the NASA one.
I was
Sorry, you
gonna
can't use
say, like,
that
I want to track my space deliveries.
one day. But Foodie is owned by the former president of Nike Air Jordan, and it's a food lovers social media, and it's really cool. That was fun. I think it looks beautiful, and it's a really good, interesting use case of building a niche community.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Was there any perk in this for you? Like, did you get Jordans like on the side as part of a thank you at all with this project?
No,
Oh man.
I got to talk to, but I tell you what was interesting for me because usually I'm working with 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs,
Right.
and I'm not super in corporate deals just
Mm.
because the red tape is not necessarily my favorite process. But seeing these guys, because the one of the owners is the former president of Air Jordan, but the other one is the president of Nike Olympics.
Oh
And so these
wow.
guys are high level, 7 figure earning corporate guys. And what was good for me is just the osmosis of seeing how they operate.
I bet. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what stuck out to me is these guys just had the same tone no matter what was going on. It was going good, it was going bad, it was going normal. They showed up and they approached it with the same tone. And I learned a lot from that.
Oh, that's really cool. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess when you're at that level, you need to be steady, right?
Right. Yes.
I'm interested. The app guys is just one of your businesses. Is that right? Do you have multiple companies that you're running?
Yeah, I have another company that we do we do some data entry and some content writing. So we manage the Solana ecosystem, and then we've done a lot of like obviously the app guys stuff.
Right.
And that one, so I have that, and then I have my own app called Countdown by Logan, which is how we got connected.
Exactly. I'm excited. I'm excited. I gave a little tease about that. I want to save that because I think that is a really interesting app. But you referenced doing the content for the Solana ecosystem.
It's not exactly that though. So there's two things we do there. So we do content for companies. For Solana, we manage the metadata of the ecosystem, meaning any project that is listed on Solana is reviewed and approved by my team. So that's what we do for Solana.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious, like these two parts of your world coming together. How do you see the whole Web3 space? With DeFi and crypto and just the blockchain changing how we can interact and work. Do you think that that there will be platforms, whether social media or different things like that, that are decentralized that will change the way apps work?
And there's where it gets interesting. Of course, yes. Now the thing is, the fact that it's decentralized is interesting. But blockchain is also, you can in some ways look at it as a place where stuff goes as opposed to a traditional way that you would hold tech.
Mm.
Um, and so, for example, one thing would be probably real estate will eventually be all blockchain, and it should, because real estate's absolutely ridiculous. So hopefully they'll streamline that. It'll be more efficient. The problem right now is that the fees are so heavy
Right.
when you use crypto. So if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to build a food lovers social media and I want it to be on a blockchain," the problem is we can pay AWS for their hosting, or we can pay all of these crazy high gas fees, and that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
more. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to have a good reason that a smart contract is actually better than what I could just throw together with traditional coding.
Interesting.
So if I was to put it in a nutshell, it matters. It will change the world, but it is all overhyped, is the way I would put it.
Right now we're in the era that's similar to like the early days of the internet where it was pets.com and all these
Yeah.
everything's going to be on the internet, which was true, but there was a lot of overhype then, and I think there's a lot of overhype now, but the change is coming down the road. Well,
Yeah. And I think the one just rule of life, but especially of where you put money, is you need to make sure you understand stuff before you become religious about it. So
mhm.
don't get all excited about Bitcoin and Web3 and stuff if you don't understand it.
Mm,
Just understand it first.
that's so good. Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that you come from a religious background, and that's not necessarily where you are today. But I
Mhm.
don't know if you have this experience because I come from the same background, but I see a lot of the same human tendencies that I experienced in religion in
Yeah.
completely different contexts,
Yeah.
like crypto, like, NFT communities, whatever it might be. And it's just mind blowing
Uh-huh.
because you're like, wait a second, I thought that was just religion. Actually, that's an aspect of humanity that keeps getting repeated no matter what the context is. This like devotion and almost cult like mindset that's brought to so many different areas of culture and society.
100%. And to be fair, because of my background, I may have a lower tolerance for some of that vibe, but but
It triggers you more quickly? It's like, "Whoa, wait a second." Like your
yeah,
guard's up faster?
right, yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned is that just because something is true doesn't mean it is the truth. Like the
Mm,
truth is a collection, a critical mass of a collection of facts that are cohesive. So if you say um, Bitcoin is is safer to transact with, there's sometimes that's true, but bro, that is not the truth. There's just more context there,
mm,
and that's usually what's missing in those kind of exchanges. Is there's
right.
more to the truth.
There's not as much nuance there. That's such an interesting idea too, like, when it comes to, like, how you run your business
Mhm.
or a new business that you want to start, like, how does that mindset inform those kinds of issues? And what I mean is that mindset that's like, no, it doesn't have to be one truth. There's not a single truth that's guiding this. Like, does that inform the way you think about the way you run your business or the investments you make or the risks that you take as a business owner?
Yes, and here's where it comes into play. At least what comes to mind immediately is how my identity is affected.
Mm,
So it may be true that a campaign or an entire business, I have more failed businesses than successful businesses. It may be true that I failed in business, but it's also true that I've succeeded in business. So just because I fail in something,
wow.
it is not the truth. But also, just because I have a good month or a good quarter or a good year or a good project, that is not the whole truth either.
Right.
And I need to be a little bit more circumspect, a little bit more wise
Mhm.
about where I attach things to my identity,
Mhm.
is I think where that comes in.
Oh, that's so good. Well, we're talking about some of these deeper aspects of life. I wanna talk about the app
Cool.
that you created, the Countdown app. Um, what is the Countdown app? What are you counting down for people who buy this app?
It's Countdown by Logan on the App Store, and it shows the number of days you have until you die. And I actually saw a video from you where you had a poster
Right.
of checkoff days, and then I saw a video from Jesse Eitzler being interviewed. I don't know if you know who he is. Really
No.
interesting entrepreneur. He's married to Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, and he's done a ton of stuff himself.
Oh gosh, that's a power couple.
Oh yeah, and he talks about this concept, and I saw just pieces
Mm.
over the course of a few months, and so was like, ah, that's really interesting. Keeping the number of days you have left until you die is a really good way to practice presence, especially for someone like me who's just dreaming. And
Always thinking about the next thing, always thinking about the next business, the next victory or whatever.
yeah, yes. Now, some of the responses have been, and then you also, by the way, you can set up something called spotlights. So I like racquetball. I play about once a week average.
Mm.
So I figure I can play until I'm 75. I see old guys playing all the time. So
That's
that's what I
great.
have calculated.
Yeah.
So I have how many games counting down of racquetball I have left in my life. How many summers until my kids are out of school.
Wow.
The things like that you
Yeah.
can set up. And it just helps me stay present. Because when I'm looking at today, I have 24,720 days left until I die. If I live till I'm 101,
Mm.
which is my plan, if I
That's
can
good.
help it.
That's good. You got a goal.
Yeah.
Well, it's
And
interesting. Like this idea to me is so powerful. You mentioned the poster that I have. It's in my bedroom, and
mhm,
I bought this. I mean, I think I bought it off of like an Instagram ad. I'm such a sucker for like ads that pop up on Instagram. I see stuff and I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I need that. So I bought this poster, which is it's like it's a dot, basically a fill in the blank dot for every week of your life. Your life in weeks is the name of it. And so you
yeah,
set how many years you think you're going to live or what you're aiming for, and I set 88, and then it like pre-fills all the dots that are already gone, which I have to say when I got it in the mail, I was like, there are more black dots than white ones. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
based on I'm 47 years old, so I'm a little over halfway there if I make it to 88. And and it is just this way to visually see this idea of, okay, these are the years that have gone by, and don't just kind of live your life as if you have this endless amount of time. There's an endpoint.
mhm,
And I use this tool that I learned from my friend Donald Miller, where in my coaching program, we actually have people write their obituary and kind of reflect back on their life. And so they have to, kind
yeah,
of say, I think I'm going to live to 70, or I think I'm going to live to 100, and then kind of tell the story of what they've focused on and what mattered to them in that time. But it really does. It focuses the mind. It
right,
really it
yeah,
really brings into this sense of, like, you use the word presence, but it's like presence, priority, like what really matters is there. The thing I'm curious to hear from you is what is the reaction that you get from people? Because my kids hate my poster. Like, and I've actually thought about taking it down, because for me it's
mhm,
motivating and it's like I feel at peace with the knowledge that I'm gonna die. But for my kids, it's like it reminds them, their dad's not gonna be around, and they in kind of a playful way, but not a playful way, they get ticked off at me that I have this poster in my room. And I'm
yeah.
just curious, like, what's the reaction that you've gotten from people to the countdown app?
So, 80% of people feel that way. 80% of people are too bothered by it. It's too morbid, and I
Really?
get it.
That's a high percentage. They
It's
would.
a very high percent. It's not for most people. I get it. I understand. So that is, and then you have a small selection of people that are just trolls a little bit, and they'll be like, "You don't know when you're gonna die." It's like, bro, that is not the point.
Right. Yeah.
Of course you
Yeah.
don't. But yeah, it's really for a certain. It's for a pretty niche group. I feel like.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, like, I was having a conversation with a friend, and she was talking about this question of whether she wanted to stay. I live in Vancouver, BC, whether she wanted to move
Okay.
back to Toronto. That's where her family is. And she was framing it in terms of saying, I think about the fact that if I go home for Christmas and maybe a week in the summer, how much time do I actually have with my parents and my sisters
Right.
in for the rest of my life? And a really powerful way to talk about that. And I feel like
Yeah,
that's what your app does. You can
right.
create spotlights and you can say, well, how many family vacations do you actually have? And does that
Yeah.
add to the sense of value and importance if you start recognizing that they're not infinite. Not none of us are infinite, like all these experiences and these moments. And I know, for like you said, some people would rather just not think about it because it's anxiety producing. But for me, it's motivating.
For me, it's motivating too. Yeah. I feel like, though, like, if you don't like to think about it, eventually you will, though.
Yeah.
And eventually you will. It's just inevitable. So I feel like it's better to embrace it. And it's a good way to make the days count. Because
Mm,
otherwise, the likelihood of getting to an old age, if you are lucky enough to do that and you know your life is fading, there comes a point when you can't hike the Grand Canyon anymore and you can't play racquetball. And
right.
that happens if you get old.
Hmm.
And your kids are maybe across the country and you see them once or twice a year. And that is what happens. So I'd rather take advantage of what I have right now.
How do you balance as an entrepreneur, like that sense of pressure? You gotta be you gotta be building, you gotta be hustling, you gotta be multiplying, scaling, and so on. Like, I feel like that pressure is always there with investing in those experiences, those relationships, those trips, all those kinds of things. Like, how do you hold those two things yourself?
Yeah, so I've recently made some changes in this area because I also work from home like 99% of the country right now.
Right.
And what was happening is people would knock on my door, come in and interrupt my flow, and I would get frustrated. Or I would be working at 9 at night and I'd be sitting in the living room and they would say, "Hey, daddy, look at this." And then I'd not be able to be there, or maybe I'd even be a little bit of a jerk and be frustrated about it.
Right.
And it wasn't good for anybody, and it wasn't good for me because I wasn't clocking out at all.
Mm,
So one of the changes I made was I work 9 to 5, man. I work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, and or at least I work till 5 p.m. Sometimes I do work earlier. Nobody's
mm,
up or anything.
sure.
So a couple things. I work 9 to 5, and then the rule is be efficient. Like if I get to the end of the day and there's this stack of stuff, it's okay. What do I need to delegate? What do I need to automate? And that is a regular part of my routine. It's kind of going through that list
That's good.
and who do I need to hire, that kind of thing. And I don't do work in the living room. I only work in my office. So
Mm,
people know if I'm sitting in the living room, if I'm not in my office, I'm not working. So clear boundaries, and it also conditions me because everything's conditioning. So then when I sit down in the living room, I give myself permission, like the person I have to fire or hire or the deal that's going good or bad, I'm allowed to put to the side
mm,
and just enjoy being home.
that's so
And
good.
that's been a nice way to do things. Now, but not everybody. You also have to get there. Like there is a point in entrepreneurship where you got to work the 80 hours. It's just like part of
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
But I think you can work yourself out of that pretty quickly.
Hmm. You have to actively choose, which again is that whole
Yeah,
presence of like, hey, you can grind like that for a certain amount of time, but what are you missing
right.
in the meantime? Yeah.
Right. And what are people missing from you? Because
Yeah.
honestly, my DNA, and you've run some pretty big organizations, I assume you're similar,
Hmm.
is I could work 80 to 90 hours a week and be and love my life. But people would not love the life that I'm in with them that are around
That's an
me.
important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really
So I
good.
had to make those edits.
Well, coming back to what your business, the App Guys, does, who is the kind of ideal person that you would say, yeah, you know what, you actually could use an app you should reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Like, what are the types of businesses or people where an app could actually create revenue or build their business? Who is that person?
Typically, it's somebody who's already making 7 or 8 figures in a business. So somebody who already understands business. I don't recommend it as your first
Right.
business because it takes a lot of capital and time, and there's a delay, and you have to pivot. And
Hmm.
what you're selling by the end of your first or second quarter is different than what you even thought. That's just the nature of it, or at
Right.
least in some respect, to
Right.
some degree. So it's not a good first business. I will say that unless
Mm.
you have connections to investors like venture capital, angel investors, and they're going to throw a couple million at
Hmm.
you because you have to build it, you have to market it, you have to pay payroll, and yeah.
There's so much that goes into it. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And so you take a loss often for 1 to 2 years on an app. Now that's not always true. We have one where it's in the construction software and it's in the construction industry. The owners
Mm.
own and run multiple 8-figure paving business already, and then they built this software,
Mm.
and they are probably going to have $1 million in annual subscriptions by the end of their first quarter of launch. That's not always the case, though. Yeah,
Incredible. Yeah. And they know an industry, it's not their first rodeo. They've built a business already. So the app is just in addition to that
yeah,
and is helped by all their knowledge already.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're very
Well,
connected.
this is
Yeah.
another question. When if somebody has some idea, like you said, everybody has an idea for an app kind of a thing. How do you think through app versus web-based tool? Like I was thinking about the Wordle craze, this word game that everybody's been playing and posting to Twitter and guess a 5-letter word within 6 tries kind of a thing. And some guy just built
Yeah,
this this free
right.
web-based
Mhm.
game. It got bought by the New York Times, for whatever, $1 million
Millions, multiple
and so on.
millions, yeah.
Is it
Multiple
multiple
millions, yeah.
millions? Well, it deserves to be multiple millions because the whole freaking world has been
Right?
playing this game. But I'm just curious, like, he could have made that an app. I mean, I don't even know if he had any, I don't think he had any concept of how that it would blow up, but like, how do you think through that question of even some kind of simple thing like a game like that, app versus web-based tool?
Yeah, so by the way, a web-based tool is a web app. It so we do
Okay,
web
great. Yeah, that's a
apps
good.
and mobile apps.
Oh, so your team does
Yeah,
both.
and probably by the end of this year, more than half of our work will be web apps as opposed to mobile, because often
Interesting.
it's better for
Okay,
internal
interesting.
softwares and things like that.
Mm,
Um, but what makes the difference? It's where your users are and what. So it really depends on what you're doing. If it's an internal tool for a business,
mhm,
you're doing something that helps your efficiencies, that kind of thing. Basically, if you're a business, anything you're doing on paper, if you're a big 7 or 8 figure business and you have a lot of paper in your office, you need to build an app to get rid of that paper because it means you're bleeding man
mm,
hours, you have inefficiencies, your data's bad. You should build an app for that for sure, and that's probably going to be a web app. If you have something that is consumer facing, like Wordle, I'm a little surprised it
mm.
did as well as it did without being iOS or Android. I'll say that. New, yep.
Interesting.
But man, I mean, you can't guess these things though. Like you can give a best
Yeah,
educated, yeah,
right.
but New York Times, I bet you who bought them, I guarantee in the next 3 or 4 months, I bet you they publish iOS and Android of Wordle. Let's see. But I would expect that's what's going to
Yeah.
happen. So consumer facing, because people are buying apps. Now, the thing though about an app store that you also have to consider with your business plan is Apple takes 30%. So
Right.
you have to make sure that that works for you. But their conversion rates are also really high because people can just click,
Right.
scan their face, and you're good. Yeah.
Boom, boom, it's downloaded. Yeah. That's so cool. Um, you have an ebook on your website, The App Owner's Guide to the
Mm.
Galaxy. I'm just curious, what is this book? You're giving it away. It's a lead generator on your
Yeah.
site. Is that right?
Yes.
And what's in this book?
Yeah, so it is on Amazon, and it released, and then it was bestseller in a few categories. You know how that works. It's not as fancy as it sounds. It was like in a few subcategories kind of thing, but it made me feel good. It made
That's
me
great
feel good,
though.
yeah,
Yeah, take your
right.
wins, man. Don't apologize for that. Don't downgrade that.
But on loganfields.com, it is free, and that is for people that are looking to become app owners or they're new app owners. And honestly, half of
Mm,
what I tell you is if you're hiring an app team, how to make sure that you have your code, how to make sure you have your design files, stuff like that. Because I can't tell you how many people. Now there's other stuff as far as how to go through the process and
mm,
hire the right people and manage the right people. I do
right.
address all of that, but I've had so many people come to us and they're like, "Yeah, we spent 30,000 or 50,000 and it's gone. They just ghosted us and we don't have our code." And
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
mhm, all the time,
Were the teams they hired like literally just
all the
disappear
time, all the time.
and just
Yeah,
ripped them
all the
off?
time.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. Loganfields.com is where people can see the different work that you're doing. And then the appguys.com is the business site. Definitely check that out. Last question before we go. What is the app that you can't live without on a daily, weekly basis? Like I was thinking about this, and there are multiple times a year where I will say, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of my iPhone. I'm just going to go back to a flip phone, go to a simple, and there's always an app or two that I'm like, well, no, actually, I can't live without that. I'm curious what yours is. What do you consistently use?
if I'm getting rid of the work ones, because I do have my work on my phone, so
Right.
let's get rid of those. Probably YouTube. I don't. That's probably a common answer, but I subscribe, so I have the premium subscription. I don't get ads, and I can download and I can listen to stuff in the background. So most of my podcasts and stuff are YouTube audio.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
love it. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, can't do that on a flip phone.
No.
Oh, Logan, I love this conversation. I love the work that you're doing. I happily am a proud owner of the Countdown app that you created. Countdown by Logan is on the App
Thanks, man.
Store, and I hope that it will make me a more present and focused person in everything that I do. But thanks for having this conversation. I've learned from you as a business owner and the way that you approach life, and look forward to learning more from you in the days to come.
Thank you, man. I had a good time.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. And finally, if you or your company need help clarifying your message and creating a marketing strategy that you can implement to reach more people, stop by our website, clearandloud.com, and schedule a free strategy call. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.